All right, so those of you that missed yesterday, we just did abortion and eliminate affirmative action. Everybody's got one of these? Okay. All right, so let's talk about welfare. All right, right before the bell rang, Peter talked about food stamps. Okay. And guys, going back, so I'm pretty old. When I was growing up, you could go to the grocery store and you going through the line and they actually had food stamps. So they were like postage stamps. Like people that were poor would get a book of postage stamps like that, and they could use those to pay for food. Okay. The other thing you could do is I had friends that didn't have a lot of money, and usually local communities had what were called like warehouses where they had government food that you could go get. So like government cheese. Okay, and government cheese was good. It's like Velveeta came in and said, man, that government cheese is good. And if you melt it and put some stuff in it, it's like great queso stuff, right? So it like that block of cheese that you see with Velveeta, that was government cheese. Okay, you get your government meat, government butter, government milk, and that sort of thing. Okay. Now there's kind of a stigma when you go through the line at the grocery store and you have to use these stamps. The people that are behind you see that you're poor and you have food stamps. Okay. So over time they kind of changed that up and they use what's called a vision card now, which looks like a credit card. Okay, just understand that somebody else is putting that money on that card that they're using. Okay, now food stamps are not the biggest part of welfare. Okay, it is one part of welfare. Today, as we speak, there are about 45 million people in the United States that receive food assistance. Okay. That number has steadily grown. When the economy is good, that number tends to come down. When the economy struggles, that number tends to go up. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, in this country, we really didn't have welfare. How many? You guys all had history last semester, right? You remember the New Deal? During the Great Depression, that's when welfare started in this country in the 1930s. Prior to that, if you needed help, you would go to your neighbor. You would go to your church. It was done by local communities. The federal government had no role in that until the New Deal. Okay, so this is really since the 1930s. And it started, there was no direct assistance, and then it started, okay? In the 1960s, we elected a guy named Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, okay? And his campaign was the war on poverty and that we're going to build a great society. And so the number of welfare programs in this country doubled, tripled, quadrupled, okay? And so what started happening was you had people that went on welfare and stayed on welfare their whole life. And then their children went on welfare and they stayed on welfare their whole life. So it was almost like we were like trapping people in this system because they weren't having to work, they were getting money from the government. Okay. Now you can get cash from the government if you're poor, if you especially if you have kids, okay? So you guys are Catholic, you know what social justice is, right? So like if somebody falls on hard times, our job as Jesus teaches us is to help people, help the poor. Yes? Okay, now there's a difference between you going down and giving money to the Lord's Diner so that they have money to buy food to feed people, or you going down to the Lord's Diner and actually serving people. There's a difference between that, helping your neighbor, and people getting a check from the government, because that comes in the mail. Okay, and so nobody really has to look anybody else in the eye to receive that money. It's just like, I expect it the first of the month. When's my money coming? And so that starts to build a sense of what? Entitlement. Like I'm entitled to this. Okay? But in reality, you're not. Okay? So, how big is welfare today? The most expensive part of welfare today is this right here. Y'all heard of this? Medicaid? Okay, what this is health care for the poor, especially poor children. Okay? When a child is born, when you were all born, you didn't get to choose who your parents were. Okay, it's not the child's fault, the situation they're born into. Okay, so as a society, we pay taxes, and that money goes to pay for health care for the poor and especially poor children. This is the most expensive part of welfare. Okay, so in Kansas, and all 50 states, this is funded by both state and federal dollars. So the federal government chips in on this, and the states chip in on this. Okay. There's also something called WIC. Okay. This is for women that have children. This stuff, this helps buy things like formula, diapers, and so forth. Okay. The most vulnerable in our society are children and single mothers. Okay, that have children. And so as a society, we try and put these things together to help people. Does that make sense? Now, as the 60s rolled on and we got into the 70s and 80s, there were so many people on welfare and not many very people were getting off of welfare. And so there was a couple of governors in Wisconsin and Michigan that experimented with some new rules for welfare. And they said, listen, you can be on welfare for 2 years. Okay, so you're a single mom, got children, you can't leave them at home to go to work because there's nobody to take care of them. That would be neglect of the child, yes? Can't leave them at home. Okay? So you get 2 years to get your situation in order. And then you've got to get off. Now, if you fall back on hard times, you can go back on welfare, but you can't be on it more than 5 years at any given time. Okay? So they put limits on it. In Kansas today, in order to receive welfare, thank you, you either have to be working, looking for a job, or going to school to better your situation in life in order to receive it. Okay? Those governors saw a lot of people, because of those stricter rules, get off of welfare and go to work. And so the U.S. government copied that. And they said, all right, this is Welfare Reform Act of 1995. Bill Clinton was a Democrat, signed it into law with a Republican Congress. Now, there were a lot of opponents to this that said, we're going to have millions of people living in the streets, children are going to starve, and all this. This is a tough love approach. You know what happened? Millions of people left welfare and went to work. Okay, it worked. All right, just a little bit of tough luck. We need a safety net for people that fall on hard times, right? But how big is that net? Here's the situation, guys. You're 18 years old. You come from a broken family. You get pregnant. You have a child. Okay? You go on welfare. You're not married. Get help from the government. Then the government says, listen, if you have another child, we'll send you more money. Because you need more money because now you have 2 children out of wedlock. And if you have another child, we'll send you more money. Now, when that first child reaches the age of 15 or 16 years old, and say it's a girl, what is she modeling? Her mother, she gets pregnant, doesn't get married, has a kid, goes on welfare. The cycle began to repeat itself. Who was replacing the father in the home? The government. Guys, I'm saddened to report this to you, but over 75% of African American children born in this country today, 75% are born into a single parent household. Prior to welfare programs, African American children were less likely to be in a single parent than white children. The family unit was destroyed. And we got what were known as welfare queens. Any of you guys work retail? Like at Dillon's? Where you work? Okay. You guys accept food stamps? Okay. So, in 2010, when we went through the Great Recession, beginning of the Obama administration, Obama told the states, you no longer have to use the work requirement for people to get welfare. Now, Kansas still has it, but many states dropped it. Okay, so no longer do you have to be working. Now, this is a really complicated situation. I had a student a few years ago that worked at the YMCA, and she worked in the child care center. Okay, so like she would go over there for a few hours. She probably worked 20 hours a week. She said there was this older woman that worked there, and she said, hey, I've got to clock out. I've got if I go another hour, I won't qualify. I'll make too much money, and I won't get my welfare. So the government's discouraging this woman from working more because then she won't get her welfare. And if you get married, you're no longer a single parent, so you won't qualify a lot of times for some of these programs. So the government's discouraging people from getting married and having two parents. This is not good, okay? So it's a very complicated system. There are really more programs than just what I have up here. But at one point recently in Hawaii, if you qualified for every welfare program that they have, in a year, that would accumulate to about $50,000 in welfare. Now, if you're living in Hawaii and you go get a job at McDonald's, now you make more than $8 an hour at McDonald's in Hawaii. So say you're making $12 an hour. How many hours would you have to work to make $50,000 in a year? Or you could stay home and be on welfare and collect $50,000. You see what I'm saying here? That's crazy and unsustainable. Now, not every state's like Hawaii. Okay, Kansas, the rules are stricter. Okay, you got to be looking for a job, you got to be working or going to school to improve your lot in life. So that's where we stand today. Okay, did we talk about school lunches yesterday? If you didn't bring your lunch yesterday and you ate in the cafeteria, did you have to pay for that lunch? No, nobody did. Which is crazy. Jack, can your parents afford to feed you lunch and breakfast? Yes, they can. I know your parents are. Kinsey, can your parents afford that? Yeah. Why are we paying for your lunch? Now, there may be people in the room or in the school whose parents really struggle to pay for that lunch and breakfast. And that's why we have free and reduced lunches. Okay, for those folks that meet a certain threshold of income. Why are we doing that now with people that don't need the help? Guys, we're printing the money that we don't have in mortgaging your children's future. We are now at $30 trillion in debt as a nation. And because of the Omicron variant, Congress is talking about spending another $600 billion, just printing that money and sending it out. How long are they going to keep up free breakfast and lunch for every student in America? You know how expensive that is? When I can afford to feed my kids. Is it insane? Is it just me? Or is that insane? There's no free lunch. Your kids are going to pay for it. Your grandkids are going to pay for it. Today's politicians are mortgaging the future of the next generation. This generation is supposed to leave the country in a better place than when we got here. Are we doing that? I don't think we are. That's not good. Okay, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to wake you up. Okay, all right. So everybody's got different views on, welfare and so forth. But there are over, I don't know how many open jobs there are in this country right now. It's easy to find a job. Wages are rising. Should we reduce welfare, or is it good where it's at? Like in Kansas, you've got the work requirement and so forth. We do want to take care of people that really need it. I'm not saying get rid of welfare. I'm saying reduce it, make it more difficult, more tough love approach. Are we spending too much money? Guys, I think, personally, what we're doing with free lunches for everybody is welfare for people that don't need it. Follow me? So, whatever you guys think on this, okay? You think that welfare should be harder to get or easier to get? So if you say we should reduce it, say yes. If you say no, we need to keep it where it's at, say no, or increase it. If you think, hey, we need more, say no. So you decide. Did you get one of these? No. Yeah. Okay. I think I just gave out my last copy. What's the next one? Prayer in school. Okay. So about 15 minutes ago, we prayed in school. Yes? All right. Does anybody know what the first textbooks that were used in public schools in the United States of America was? The Bible. Now, in rural America, you generally had, any of you guys ever seen Little House on the Prairie? Okay. You've heard of the one-room schoolhouse? Okay, where if you live in a farming community, okay, and you've only got enough kids for one school, and you hire one teacher, and you've got grade 1 through 12, everybody in the same school, same room. It's like a church. You all go there and go to school, okay? And they would use the Bible to teach people how to read, teach them, their letters, their vocabulary, and they would teach them morality, okay? Over time, we got a little more sophisticated in this, and in New England, they started using what was called the New England Primer. That was the first kind of real textbook. And in that New England Primer, they had Bible quotes and vocabulary that they took from the Bible and so forth. Okay, you can go back and find these from the 1700s and early 1800s. Okay, by the, we get into the 18s, whatever, you start to get real textbooks on reading, writing, history books, and so forth. Okay, now prayer was allowed. So if you were a teacher and you wanted to talk to your kids about Jesus, you could talk to your kids about Jesus. okay, until 1961. Okay, now we're a diverse nation, more diverse today than we've ever been. Okay, but as we get into the 1960s, after World War II, we took in a lot of refugees from Nazism, from communism, and so forth. So we start getting various religions. Now, it started with Protestants, had Catholics, okay, you got some Jews, okay, then we start to bring in, we start to bring in some Buddhists, you know, from different parts of the world. We got Chinese people coming in that helped build the railroad. So you start getting these different religions in America, and we have the First Amendment, which says freedom of religion, okay? So that's fair, that's good, that everybody gets to practice whatever religion they want. And, but then you have some people that lose faith in God. So what do we call those people? Atheists, okay? And atheists generally, when the kids go to school, they're like, hey, don't be teaching my kid about Jesus. I don't believe in Jesus. But the teacher's praying with the kids, or the school's doing it over the intercom. And so there was a Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court said, you can't do that. You can't force religion on somebody that doesn't want it. That comes from the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment, in the Bill of Rights. Okay? It says that Congress shall make no law establishing a religion. The reason they put that in there, guys, when we first started as a nation, if you lived in a certain state, you could not run for political office unless you were a certain religion under state constitutions. And they said, this is a bad idea. Okay, we're not going to discriminate against people based on their religion. So we can't establish Christianity as the official religion. If the Protestants did that, they said Protestantism or Calvinism is the official religion of the United States, all of you Catholic folks would be like, what the heck, man? You follow me? And if the Catholics did that, the Protestants would be like, what the heck, man? And the British and the French fought many wars over this over the centuries between Catholicism and Protestantism. You know what I mean? We've come a long way. Now you've got a heathen up here, a Protestant up here teaching you guys in a Catholic school. We're getting along. Okay? Come on, that's funny. All right? Now, so you see what I mean by establishing a religion. Now, have you guys ever heard this term, a wall of separation between church and state? Y'all heard that before? Does anybody know where that comes from, that phrase, a wall of separation of church and state? Well, that's why I'm here, okay? When they were writing the new Constitution, the Baptists were worried that this new government would take control over religion. And so Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to the Danbury Baptist Association. He said, need not worry. There is a wall of separation between the church and the state. What he was saying was that the government can't interfere in religion. He wasn't saying that religious people or religious organizations couldn't participate in government. Okay? So the Supreme Court kind of took those words out of context. Separation of church and state is not, those words do not appear in the Constitution. The words that appear are, Congress shall not establish a religion, nor prohibit the free exercise thereof. That's what we're doing here. We're using the free exercise of religion to build a Catholic school and teach students about Jesus. That's what we've done here. They're practicing the free exercise. Okay? So let me give you an example where this makes a really big difference in society. All right? This says that you cannot proselytize, evangelize to your students. Any guys ever see the movie God is Not Dead? God is Not Dead 2? Okay. In the second movie, a student is curious, knows the teacher is a Christian, and is curious. So the student starts asking probing questions. And if the teacher answers that question the wrong way, they can get themselves in trouble or get fired. Now, one of my best friends teaches at Northwest High School. He teaches government like I do. He used to teach in this classroom right next door to me. His name's Tom O'Connor. You guys know the O'Connor family? Okay. Good Irish Catholics. Okay. So Tom, while teaching government, can't say what I'm about to say to you. Okay? Premarital sex is a sin. And you could burn in hell for doing it. Okay? I just said that. Is that true? Is that what you're taught? Not taught that? You may not believe that. Is that what you're taught? Okay, now listen. What Mr. O'Connor can say to his students, here are the repercussions for premarital sex. 1, you could get an STD. 2, you could get pregnant. And if you get pregnant at the age of 18 or 17 or 16 or 15, life for you and that child is going to be very difficult. The chances of your child being successful in life and you being successful in life are greatly diminished. He can tell you the repercussions, but he can't tell you it's wrong. Because if he says, hey, premarital sex is wrong, you should wait till you're married. And a student says, Mr. O'Connor, why is it wrong? He can't answer that question. Why is it wrong? Because God tells us it's wrong. Well, tell me about this God of yours, Mr. O'Connor. He can't open that door. Okay? Now, a little background here on myself here. When I was born, my parents went to church. I was baptized in a Presbyterian church. Okay? When I was 3, my dad said, we're not going to church anymore. Everybody that goes to church is a hypocrite. They sin all week, and then they show up at church all dressed up and act like they're not sinners. And we're all sinners. Okay? So we quit going to church. So I did not grow up in the church. I didn't go to Bible school. I didn't learn anything about it. Thankfully, met a girl in college that went to church. She said, if you're going to date me, you're going to church. She was a Presbyterian, which I guess I was too. So I started going to church. Okay. And even after we broke up, I felt the presence of the Holy Spirit and accepted God and Jesus, and I kept going to church. Then I married a Methodist. I don't know if you know any Methodists. They're not bad people. Church itself has got some serious problems. So we went to the Methodist church for like the first 8 or 9 years we were married. And I'm like, honey, this preacher man is afraid to tell people that they're sinners. He's afraid to challenge people about their lives and how they live their lives and what they do, because he doesn't want to offend anybody. Has a priest ever offended you for the actions that you partake during the week? I hope so. I'm like, God, come on. If we're going to keep going to church, we're going somewhere else. So we're back at the Presbyterian church. Okay? And when our Presbyterian church became like the Methodist church, our church said, we're leaving that Presbyterian church, and we left them. And we became the Evangelical Presbyterian churches, where we actually teach the Bible. Unlike the Methodists and Presbyterian USA. They just choose to ignore large parts of the Bible. Okay. So that's my story. Now, when I was a kid, like some of you, I'm sure, I got into some trouble. Started hanging out with the wrong people. Now, if there was a teacher that saw, hey, this nice young boy, Charlie, is going down the wrong path. I need to talk to this kid. I need to introduce him to Jesus. If you can't tell people the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, if people don't know the difference between right and wrong, they don't get it at home, they don't get it at school, what do you wind up with? Lawlessness. No morality. If it feels good, it must be good. What's that called? Moral what? Moral relativism. Have you heard of that? Subjective truth. I make up my own truth. Yes? There is no objective truth. That's what you wind up with. Okay, you throw poverty into no morality, no virtue, no ethics, and you wind up with a criminal society. The culture in this country since the 1960s has gone down the tube. I've got two words for you. Jersey Shore. You guys ever watch that show? You know what I'm talking about? How about a TV show on MTV called Teen Moms that celebrate? Okay? Now, look, if somebody gets pregnant, we're Catholic, and we want that child to be born. We want that child to be taken care of. Okay? But guys, there is a better path. And if we ignore that better path, then we wind up with a bunch of people on welfare. And we limit the possibilities of those children. Sound like a preacher up here. I'll stop. Okay, now, can we bring prayer back into school? That's going to be hard, especially as diverse as we are now. If you ask the American people if you believe in God, since the 1970s, guys, it continues to drop. Okay? So you're going to have a lot of people that don't want their children to be taught about Jesus or Muhammad or anybody. Okay? And since we do have a lot of Muslims now, Jews, Buddhists, so forth, which religion are you going to bring back into the school? If you can't teach kids right from wrong, good from evil, explain that. The repercussions of it. This is damaging society in the view of some people. Okay? Now, this is what Kentucky's doing. Kentucky is allowing for elective classes on religion, Christianity, the Bible. Okay? They're allowing for that. But it's an elective. So if you have a young person that's 15, 16 years old, and they've never heard of Jesus or don't know much about Jesus, they can take that class in Kentucky. It's an elective. Okay? That brings God back in to the schools. Can we do that? You can't force it on people that don't want it. That's in the Constitution. Okay? So let me give you some examples that lawsuits have come up over there. You're a student at Northwest High School. Okay? Or let's say you're a coach at Northwest High School. Can you pray with your students before the game? You're not supposed to. Have I seen it? Yes. Okay? Remember Coach Topping, who used to be the baseball coach over at Heights? I'd see them before the game, just like us, go down the corner and say a prayer before the game. Okay. All right. And coaches have been fired over this. So you're a student at Northwest. Can you start a Bible club at Northwest? Yes, you can. Okay. Now, a teacher cannot sponsor that club in a sense that the teacher organizes the club. Does that make sense? Because the teacher works for the government. Before a game at Northwest High School, football game on a Friday night, can a student who's not an employee of the government use the PA system, the intercom, to say the Lord's Prayer for the safety of the athletes in that game on Friday night? Can a student do it? No, they can't. Because the PA system is bought by the government. Can a student from Northwest High School stand up in the stands at Northwest High School and say, hey, everybody, let's say the Lord's Prayer for the safety of the athletes? They do that. Yes. Okay, they can do that. You have freedom of religion. Can a student in Northwest High School right now sitting in their desk in first hour government class pray? Yes. Just can't disturb the class. Do a silent prayer anytime you want, anywhere you want. This is the United States. Okay? So we haven't abolished religion. We have just kind of kept it out of certain places. Okay? Now, they still open Congress every day with a prayer. And it's still on our money. In God we trust. For now. So if we could find a way to bring God back in where it wasn't forced on people, would you do that? You decide. What's the next one? Now listen, guys, before you answer this is for violent crime. Violent crime. All right? So, do we charge juveniles as adults sometimes in this country? Yeah. In fact, I've heard of people as young as 9 years old being charged as adults. Okay? So, you got two kind of views on this. You do an adult crime, do adult time. Now, here's the thing. If you ever do charge a minor as an adult, they don't go to adult jail at 14. They go to juvenile until they're 18. And then they transfer to an adult prison. Follow me? So violent crime here, we're talking about rape, murder, so forth. Okay? Aggravated battery, assault with a deadly weapon, something like that. Okay? Now, what the judge is going to want to know, does this 14-year-old understand the consequences of their actions? And if they do, you can charge them as an adult. Okay? So, let's, I got a few minutes. You guys have all heard of Grand Theft Auto? The video game? Okay. So, let's say you got this 14-year-old kid's been playing Grand Theft Auto since he was 12. Grand Theft Auto 4 comes out, version. How much does that cost? $60? Okay? So, the kid doesn't have $60, but he's been trained by the video game. So he goes and hides out by an ATM machine. Waits for grandma to come by to get money out of the cash machine. Got a baseball bat. So he takes a baseball bat, hits the old lady over the head, your grandmother. She falls, hits her head on the concrete, and dies. This is second-degree murder. First-degree murder is I plan to kill this person and I do it. Okay, that'll get you the death penalty in some states. Okay. Second-degree murder is you kill somebody you didn't plan on killing. Okay. Now, you guys are not too far removed from being 14 years old. Some of you may have siblings that are 14 years old. Do they understand the consequences of their crime? Okay, you try them as an adult. They go to juvie till they're 18. and then they're going to do 20 more years in adult prison. Or you try and reform that kid, and at the age of 18, you try him as a juvenile. At the age of 18, you let them back out and give them a second chance. Now, when you put that kid in juvie hall, you're putting that kid in juvie hall with a bunch of other kids that have committed crimes. How well do we do at reforming our inmates in this country? You guys know what recidivism rates are? The likelihood once you've committed a crime that you'll do it again. In this country, we have extremely high recidivism rates. Okay? We don't do a good job at reforming our inmates. So you're going to give this violent youth a second chance at 18, or are you the kind of person who says, no, I'm not letting this kid out. He just killed somebody with a baseball bat over $60. We let him out, what's he going to do next? Let's put him away for 20 more years. Chances are, by the time he gets out at 45 or 50, he's going to be less violent than he is at 20. I know I'm less violent than I used to be. Because, guys, anything I do that exerts bodily functions hurts. So I don't want to get in a fight. I really don't, because it will hurt too much. Not that I'm afraid I won't win. The pain, I just don't want to deal with. All right. Lock them up, throw away the key, reform them, hopefully, let them out. You decide. What's the next one? Okay. Well, that one's going to take a while. We're out of 45, right? Okay. Hey, we got through how many today? 3. Kicking some butt. Okay. See you guys tomorrow. Continue more of the same. All school mass. Yes.